Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of Howlin with the Huskies, live from the Steakhouse of Helena. Caleb Brooks, joined by head football coach, Coach Richy Busby, and Coach, bye week for you guys this past week. You don't have to play on Friday night. You got to go down to the beach. Your players got to rest and kind of get their legs back under them. You guys came back yesterday, had your first practice after the bye week. How did you feel about the way that the team came back, responded to the off week, and preparing for Calera this week?
Well, first, I think we had a really good off week. We're accustomed to usually going Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday during off week. We added Monday this past week, and I felt like we had a good week then, and I felt really good about our last two practices yesterday and today. So I think the kids are focused. I think they realize what's at stake. I mean, Calera's playing to get a playoff berth, and then, we've got Ben Russell sitting there who could still be playing for a possible home playoff spot. So we're going to be in two dogfights these next 2 weeks. And I think we've made our kids aware of what we're trying to accomplish, but also what Calera is out there trying to do as well.
When you look at this Calera team, it's been an up and down year for them at times. They had Spain Park beat early in the season. Ended up giving them a last, drive to end the game there, and Spain Park's able to capitalize the next week. Chelsea gets down in scoring position. They're able to hold them out. They've gotten a couple of region wins, but what do you see from them? What has kind of caused their inconsistency throughout the season so far?
Well, I was actually at that Spain Park game, and for the most of the nights, Calera controlled the ball game up and down the field, and had some opportunities in the red zone they just didn't capitalize on. But you look at Calera, and it's a lot like we see every year. They're very athletic. They've got some receivers that can really cause you issues in the open field if you allow them to get too much space and you don't tackle very well open field. And then they've got a couple of really good running backs. Like I said, they've been sporadic, but what worries me is they've also had times where they've been very, very explosive. And if they can string all that together, I feel like they're defensively they get after you. They play a lot like we do. If they we need to keep their passing game to a minimum. Farrington is got great sprinter speed, and if you give him space, like the first play against Spain Park this year to start the year off, he catches an RPO and goes 80 yards and nobody's near him. He has game-breaking speed. He's really, really good in the kicking game, so we're going to control a lot of things. And I think we need to keep the ball away from them, a lot like we talked about when we played Briarwood, and kind of control the ground game, control the clock, and just keep possession of the ball and keep it away from them.
You guys have had some injuries that were starting to kind of mount up. Do you feel like this bye week is going to help a couple of those guys kind of fix those issues and be able to be a little bit more healthy going out on Friday night?
Yeah, JT Alvis was one that we were still missing, and he was able to come back. Actually practiced for the first time yesterday. Had been running last week trying to get his stamina back up from being out 3 to 4 weeks. So he practiced really today for the first time in full pads. So hopefully we will get him back in and in the flow. I don't know how much he'll play Friday night because it's going to take more than 3 or 4 days to really get him back going full speed. But hopefully we can use him, sparingly, and also to get him, to make sure he's okay and he's comfortable playing again after his injury. But for the most part, Jordan is back feeling great. AJ, he had the leg issue where he had that deep thigh bruise. He seems to be moving really well. Matthew Thompson is doing much better. So Hunter Hale, who had, was dinged up in his ribs a little bit. Just a lot of, dings for 7 straight weeks of playing football.
You talk about the two running backs. Both your running backs have dealt with injuries at different times throughout the year. Having both of them healthy, what does that do for this offense?
Well, I think it's tremendous. That one guy doesn't necessarily have to carry the load. I think, what's been awesome about us having both of these guys is one has stepped up when the other one wasn't feeling well or injured or whatever it may be. So having two guys you can go to is invaluable. Some of the best rushing attacks we've had here at Helena is when we had, Marquise Johnson and Kobe Hughes, so kind of a 1-2 punch, kind of different backs. And Jordan and AJ are different, totally different guys, but to be able to use both their skill sets is huge, and to have both of them available and healthy is really going to help us.
Myself and Bo went and watched Calera practice in the preseason. The one thing that really stood out to us when watching them was the fact that they were really good up front. They had some guys that really got off the ball hard, and they can cause some issues up front. how important is it going to be for you guys to win the line of scrimmage, especially on the offensive side this Friday?
Well, it's going to, just like every game we've won this year, the 6th game we've won, I felt like we played really well up front. Against Homewood, we had some times where we did, maybe in the 3rd quarter, I thought we played pretty well up front. Kind of 1st, 2nd quarter, we just kind of mulled around. But for most of the year, our guys have shown up front, and just like any other ball game with us, if we can control the line of scrimmage on both sides, we feel good about our chances. Limit turnovers, against Briarwood, that was one thing we were able to do, and do a good job in the kicking game, especially when we get down in the red zone, capitalize on getting points with Austin, and then limit their kick returns. That's going to be huge. I mean, Farrington's back on kickoff and on punt, and I've had 3 coaches that have played against them that told me, do not kick him the ball. Don't get it anywhere near him. As you do it, he hits a crease. He's going the distance with it. So we got to do a really good job of angle kicking Friday night, and then if we do kick one to him, we got to do a real good job of covering.
Obviously, last year they had both Kobe Prentice and the Farrington kid. Now not having Prentice, how does that change their offense and change how you can play Farrington on Friday night?
Well, I think they've got a couple of other guys that have kind of filled the role. 2 guys trying to fill one, but I remember last year preparing for the game. It's like you take one away and you've got to deal with the other, because both these guys, Prentice is starting at Alabama, and I feel like Farrington probably has better top end straightaway speed than he did. I can't imagine him do that again this year, but they've got a couple other guys that are very good high school receivers that we're going to deal with too. I know a lot of our focus has been on number 1, but like I said, I like their 2 running backs this year that they got that can cause problems.
When you look at, coming off the bye week and all that, is there ever, concern for just going out there and maybe not having that game feel, right at the beginning and, not getting out to a good start on Friday when you come off the bye week? We talked last week about changing your routine, that type of stuff. Are you worried about that affecting anything?
I am, because there's 2 ways to look at an off week. Yeah, you get a chance to heal up and you don't have a lot of contact, but I do also feel like there's a tendency to lose the game speed and the momentum that you had winning going into a bye week. I'd much rather go into a bye week on a winning streak than I would a losing streak, because, obviously it's harder to practice and get the guys motivated. I think it's year by year. Some teams are a little more mature than others and can handle a bye week. And I thought we handled this bye week as good as we've handled any since I've been there. I think everybody showed up, everybody put in the work. We didn't overwork them. We went about an hour and 15 minutes every day, and then we were in the weight room about an hour each day. So I think we got a lot accomplished, worked on a lot of individual skills, stuff that you may not have a whole lot of time to work on when you're preparing for game week. We kind of went back and did more individual and group stuff. So I think it was a productive bye week from the standpoint of, we got a lot of individual work in and healed up some guys that really needed it. And yes, there's always the concern about coming out flat out of a bye week.
One of the things that we talked about early in the year, you guys were stressing handling the bus ride, going down there, acting right, having your focus in the right spot. Is that something that you're finding yourself kind of stressing again this week going into this ball game?
Well, you always stress when you go on the road, because I know going to Montevallo, I spent a lot of time in college down there. There's a lot of train tracks, and just like here, you can't ever predict when they're going to come through. So my concern is we're going to try to tape and get dressed at the school, which we usually don't do, and leave about 4:45 and hopefully be there by 5:10, 5:15. So it's going to kind of be a little bit more of a mad dash, getting everything ready to play. But I just feel like that's the best way to do it with their dressing room, size and the number of kids we dress, just for us to go in and get that done. But just hopefully we won't encounter any traffic situations.
Will that affect anything at halftime where maybe a certain group of kids won't be able to be in the locker room just because of the size of it and things like that?
Yeah, and I talked to Coach Hamlin today, and they've built some new bleachers there, and he said there's some area underneath there to be able to go. So I haven't seen it yet. So, but if we only have the same facility that we always have, yeah, there'll be, select few of offense and defense. There's 2 rooms there, and some of the guys will just have to be outside. You just can't fit them all in there.
With that, when you're making halftime adjustments and things like that, are you as concerned about the players that maybe won't be getting in the game and them being in there and learning, how to pay attention during halftime, how to, watch some of the other guys and how they adjust? And is that something that you want to have with your team each and every Friday?
Well, more so than that is them staying focused and in the game, because those guys on the sideline need to be in the game just as much as, maybe not as much as the guys on the field, but they need to stay in the game so the guys that are playing, they're motivating and pushing them, because one day they're going to be out there. But like you say, you want them to be able to see it, be in there and see the adjustments that are made. But, lots of times the facilities that we could go to, and even ours sometimes, just they're not conducive to having everybody in there where they can see, what's going on. And some kids are, their maturity level is not there yet, and they're maybe dressing because they're athletic and they will help us down the road one day. But sometimes you just kind of want to keep that noise out of there and keep the 18 to 20 that are going to be on the field engaged in making the adjustments.
Is that something that you would like to see high schools kind of focus on more in the future, is kind of making adequate facilities for road teams to come into, be able to have halftime and do things like that? I mean, when I was playing, I experienced places. I remember we went to a place down in Mobile that was fairly new. They didn't even have any away locker rooms. And so is that something you would like to see schools maybe focus on a little bit more in the future as we, continue to, develop and get better with high school sports here in Alabama?
I talked to a coach about that today. We were kind of talking about some places we had been, and I feel like our visitors are treated very well. They're probably 30 yards from the edge of the turf, or where we, the field, and they've got air conditioning and 6 showers and all the things. Now we have a newer school, so, but we've been in some dandies, where there's no air. The bathroom facilities are not adequate. You just got to do the best you can do. What I would like to see a focus on is some places they have some facilities, but they may be 400 or 500 yards from the stadium, and you've got to walk through the home crowd or fans or whatnot. I would like to see them do a better job of talking about the distance you can put a team and the control you have of the crowd between that team and their locker room. And yeah, of course, I'd like to see better facilities, but I understand that being in a county system, sometimes you can only control what you can control, and some of the places have really nice facilities, and some you just have to do the best you can do.
We've talked about this Calera team, kind of their ups and downs, things like that. Does that make it where in a week like this you're kind of having to, we talked about the Homewood game and how that could be a trap game for you guys, and looking ahead, the Benjamin Russell game has a chance of being really big next week. So do you find yourself kind of preaching the same things this week that you were during that Homewood week, of just not looking ahead and making sure that you don't take any team lightly?
Yeah, I don't think looking ahead is a problem for our guys. We know this is a county school, and these guys see each other a lot. I think to us it's like playing Pelham and Chelsea and Briarwood. It's a very important game. I don't think our kids are looking to Ben Russell at all yet. I think their focus is we've got to win 2 games to make sure we have a home playoff game, and I think they're taking it game by game. I haven't heard any talk of Ben Russell from our kids, so I think we're focused on Calera.
You talk about winning 2 games to get a home game and all that. Do you kind of start treating this like it's the playoffs right now? Obviously you want to be at home, so do you kind of look at these as, hey, these are 2 playoff games for us to be able to be at home and be where we want to be in round number 1?
Yeah, I think so, but not to the point that you play under pressure. I think the pressure's on Calera. They've got to win to get in, so I think they may be a little tighter early on than maybe we would be. But yeah, these next 3 games, Calera, Ben Russell, Vestavia, they're all playoff type games. So, we've got to find a way to get back out, get started, and kind of get back to where we were playing, 10, 11, 12 days ago.
When you look at this Calera team, what was so impressive about their last game, going to overtime and finding a way to get a big region win?
Well, late in the 4th quarter there, when they made a couple stops to put Briarwood out of field goal range, and then for them to come back and and score an OT. But that was the same situation. They had to beat Briarwood to stay in contention, and they went over there and did that. And Briarwood's a good football team. They've just kind of they've been sporadic too. They'll play good in spurts, and then they'll have a quarter or 2 where they just don't play well. And like I said, our region, and it still could go a lot of different ways. We've talked about Homewood being in the driver's seat, but there's 3 or 4 teams this thing could turn in 2 weeks to something that you didn't see coming as of today.
What are your biggest keys for Friday night and your team going over to Calera having a lot of success?
Well, we're supposed to get some rain starting tomorrow morning about 9 o'clock. Depending on how much rain we get, you're on a natural surface, which we don't play on much anymore. And I'm going to tell you the same things I always tell you: controlling the line of scrimmage, limiting turnovers, and then limiting return yards, and us, doing a good job in the return game on our end. But as the game settles in, it's going to come down to blocking and tackling and who protects the ball the best.
Coach, again, appreciate you taking the time this week to join us on Howlin with the Huskies. Good luck to your team as you guys go for a big region game down to Calera on Friday. Wish you guys nothing but luck and look forward to seeing how things go and look forward to being back here next week to recap it, start looking ahead to the next one.
Thank you, Caleb. Go Huskies.
Be back with more on Howlin with the Huskies right after this.
The Steakhouse of Helena is the place for community gatherings, rich history, and delectable, made-from-scratch meals. Our professional staff is dedicated to serving you with the best steaks, chops, burgers, salads, sandwiches, and more. You'll enjoy a welcoming community atmosphere, local history, and enjoyable dishes you won't find anywhere else. Our restaurant is perfect for the entire family, business events, and special occasions. So come on down to the Steakhouse in historic Old Town Helena.
Welcome back in. Howlin with the Huskies live from the Steakhouse of Helena. Caleb Brooks joined by head girls basketball coach, Coach Alan Skinner. Coach, year 8 now for you at Helena. And, I've watched my dad's a high school baseball coach. He's been at Benjamin Russell now for over 30 years. Right. And I know once you get going, it just starts flying by and the years start just piling on top of each other. And for you, when you look back at your career, now entering year 8, just how much more comfortable are you, being in this position, being at Helena, being with these girls, all that type of stuff, now having so much experience at this one school?
The old coaching adage of you don't really know what you don't know until you're a head coach. That's probably the most truthful, corny axiom that you hear, because when I became a head coach, all the things that started coming at me, that's not just what you've got going on the court, but all the other things, preseason strength and conditioning, how are you going to handle your scheduling, how are you going to interact with the guys, coaches, and all those different things, learning those and kind of getting the years under my belt to be able to handle that, it's made my job a lot easier because I'm used to the more administrative elements of being a basketball coach. And and then personnel, being here a long time, you kind of get a better feel for what kind of kid, what kind of athlete you're going to have. I learned pretty quick from an academic standpoint, I probably wasn't going to have to fight too many of those battles because we got a bunch of really good kids. But I also learned that even though I had a system in my mind that I might have felt would be, that's what I want to do, you start to see that maybe the athletes that you have coming in aren't very conducive to that system, so you got to tweak a few things. So there's just a couple of things off the top of my head that, being 8 years in, that I can look back and kind of have those watermark moments where I can kind of see, yep, that's where I learned this, that's where I learned this, that's where I learned this. And that's still beyond a lot I need to learn. I'm not saying I've got it all figured out, but in 8 years, you figure out a lot of things that you didn't really know you'd have to think about much.
Another thing is, the rules have changed since you took over this job. The amount of time that you have with your girls in the summer and when school starts and in the off season has changed. And in doing that, how much has that allowed you to help continue to develop this program, continue to get these girls better and better, having a lot more time where you can work with them now?
Oh, it's awesome. And there's several rules that have been changed over the years that I feel like were, one of them's the number of games we can play. Like it used to be, you get 20 games in 3 tournaments. Well, now they've changed it to where it's just 30 games. So there's things like that I think we could do without. But I preach to my girls all the time that if you're going to play highly competitive varsity level sports, not just basketball, but any of them, you can't be the kid that's going to say, I'm going to pick up a basketball in the beginning of October, and then when it gets to February, I'll set it down until next season. You can't do that. Because every time that you let yourself kind of take a break and you're not handling business on your end, somebody else is. So I encourage mine. We've been lifting and running and all of our 2-hour weekly allotments that the HSAA gives them, we've been making use of those. But I also really encourage my girls, if you're not a softball or a volleyball kid, then you need to find a travel team to play somewhere. Just get you some more experience, get more reps. And so being able to have that much time with my kids and my girls and kind of impress on them the importance of trying to stay sharp even when we're not in the middle of the season. Every time that the AHSAA changes a rule that allows me to have extra time with them, it does nothing but help.
When you look at last year, you had 2 seniors. It was a young group. You had to count on a lot of young players. Didn't have a ton of older players to really count on from a leadership standpoint. Some younger ones having to step up. How much is that part now going to pay off for this year's team?
Oh, huge, because and this has been a theory I've been trying to put my finger on since I've been to Helena, is that typically we don't play our best basketball until around January. And then looking back at, like you were talking about my previous teams, the amount of turnover I would have from year to year, a lot of times it seemed like it was December or January before my brand new freshman starting shooting guard or my brand new sophomore point guard really figured out what playing high school basketball was. And so I think last year we had 2 seniors and we got 3 juniors, had a handful of sophomores that got a bunch of meaningful minutes. I think one of the most impactful kids we had last year was a girl who was playing JV, and I pulled her up at the end of the year. And the way she plays and her style, she had 7 steals and 11 points in the second half against Stanhope Elmore in first round of the playoffs. And if she doesn't have that, we don't win that game because her game is energy, and she's going to get turnovers, and she's not going to be one that I'm going to want like bring the ball up the court or things like that, but she's going to guard you hard. She's going to finish at the rim. So it's just getting those kids and folding the ones in and getting the minutes that matter. And then last year, we went to the Elite Eight. We were a win away from going to Birmingham. And I've talked about it a lot this summer. I'm never going to be that coach that's like, it's last year, it don't matter, because there's so many things from year to year. If I'm going to tell my girls, like, hey, we didn't rebound well this game when we lost, well, I need to also tell them how important it is when they make big wins and do great things for our program. And so this summer, I talked to them a lot about don't rest on what we did last year, but look at last year. It's kind of like we busted through a glass ceiling a little bit because we've watched baseball, we've watched softball, our volleyball teams made playoff runs, and then for us to go and we went further than boys or girls basketball team has ever gone at Helena. That's a big deal. And that's not to say that we're good. We had a good year last year. We're not worried about it this year, but it's getting them to understand that you've shown that you're capable of earning the right to play in these big games. So I've been trying to allow that to fuel us for summer workouts, all that.
Yeah, you look at a lot of teams, they make it to where you guys made it to, get as close as you guys got to get into Birmingham. It just makes them work even harder the next year. And have you seen that with your group with this summer and what you've gotten to do during the middle of the week so far?
Yeah, and I think that, you talk about the leadership and the accountability. It's now we've got 5, 6 kids coming back that were in that position last year. So that just automatically gives them a little bit more clout in terms of their teammates listening to them and seeing what it takes to win games at a high level. And it's, another cheesy coaching axiom is that pressure is a privilege. And it's like, you're going to play in big environments. You've got to earn the right to play in them. Because everybody that's an athlete, they want to play on the biggest stage that they can. Well, you don't just get to roll the balls out and then that's where you go. So I think having that experience coupled with the amount of kids that I have coming back that were pivotal on last year's team, I think that has really helped kind of direct attention to the people that attention should be directed. The ones that have earned the right to speak their mind a little bit and respectfully can help us coach up their teammates and stuff. And, anytime you can get your players kind of fixing each other's mistakes, it makes it easy for us, but it also is a little bit longer lasting than if Coach McDonald or myself were just say, hey, you need to do A, B, or C. If your teammate's telling you, then that rings a little bit more, loudly.
Making it where you guys made it to last year, I'm sure, it was a lot of fun. It was new. Like you talked about, the team's never been that far, that type of stuff. Now that you get there and you got some coming back, do you kind of get the sense now that this team maybe expects to get back to that point and expects to be in that type of position again?
I hope so. I feel that they, we try to keep things simple. Like I don't like the, breaking down at the end of practice and where are we going, Birmingham, and stuff like that. Like I want us to take it a game at a time and make all of our focus as simple as possible. But I do think that they understand that to get to that point again, you've got to really push yourself, and you've got to really put yourself in some uncomfortable positions, get in some battles. I feel like we're going to have a pretty good schedule this year that'll be conducive to that. But I think that it's going to be something that'll be a benefit to us. I don't think it's going to be like a pressure thing in any stretch.
Talk about the schedule. Who are some of the new teams that you guys are going to be facing this year that you feel like can, kind of help get you that experience and, give you some of those pressure moments that you want your girls in?
We're going to play Northridge. We picked up games with Northridge and Hueytown. Those are both historically they're solid. Chilton County and Calera rotate out of our area, but that brought Briarwood back in. And And we played Briarwood last year, and if you're going to go play them, you're going to play well coached, really disciplined, good bunch of girls. Our tournaments, we're going to play in Northridge this, Thanksgiving tournament, hopefully play some teams from Tuscaloosa, some different kind of opponents. We're going to go play Bibb County twice this year. That's just, last year we played them, and that was a bunch of just strong, athletic, just aggressive kids that, sometimes you need to step outside of just the Shelby County bubble to go play some different kind of athletes, kind of see what you're about. And I always have, Thompson and Oak Mountain. Chelsea, Coach Harlow and I always joke that when we play, we're both, match-up zone pressure kind of guys. So our games typically devolve into rock fights every time we go play, but it's, that's always going to, playing them always helps us. Those are a few. And then, playing at Thompson for their Veterans Day event. We're going to play Guntersville there, played the 5A state championship last year. I was talking to Coach Smith today, and he was making arrangements for his Christmas tournament we're playing in. I think we're going to play, we'll end up playing Vestavia, I think, the first game there. They played the 7A state championship game last year. So, going into those games, to me, is as much about getting my girls in the right frame of mind to play somebody, because it's easy to get them tuned up to go play Pelham, Calera, Chelsea, all the, Thompson. But playing a team that is going to challenge you and then put you in a situation where you have to have your mind right, and it's not just a rivalry thing, I think that's huge. Huntsville, we'll play Huntsville. We're going to go play in a shootout at Sylvania High School. We'll play Huntsville, so that'll be another 7A little challenge that we can get, and then, the rest are just the standard year in, year out opponents.
So is it just a 3-team area now with Briarwood and Pelham?
Yes. I don't like it, but state tells me we got to do it.
No, but it obviously changes things. I mean, it makes it where if you win the area, you're in, no matter what. And then if you don't win the area, you've got to win that area game, but you don't really have much leeway in the regular season.
Not at all.
So how do you, I've talked with a lot of coaches about this. How do you like the setup right now with the postseason, with it coming down to the area tournament, or is that something that you would like to see change potentially in the future?
I was fired up when I saw that they came out and said that we were going to go to more of a regional format like football. And then as quickly as they got us excited about it, they snatched it away. Yeah. But I think that'd be the best way to do it. I think it'd be a lot easier in terms of scheduling. For basketball.
That's the biggest thing I hear from every coach.
Because it's just so hard. Coach McDonald and I, we've been working on that for the last couple of weeks, and we've been, having going back and forth that just to get, JV girls and freshman boys games nailed down and stuff like that. So saying whether it would be an 8-team region and you play everybody twice, or 8-team, you play everybody once, it would help with scheduling being the easiest one. But I also think that you're going to get more variety, and you're going to get teams that get a lot more challenges throughout the season. I'd much rather it be that way than fluctuate back and forth. Sometimes you're in a 4-team, sometimes you're in a 3. If you're close to Mobile, you might be in a 5. I just think it'd be a lot more uniform, probably, to go that way.
The biggest thing that I've been for, too, is meaningful games during the year. Really,
Absolutely.
Right now, to me, it's hard for you to look at your girls and tell them that any of these games matter, because it comes down to what you're going to do in February.
And it's a lot of times for me, it's looking at some of those non-area games and pointing to elements against those games of how they're going to help us in area games. Well, I'd just rather, let's just go play everybody, and if you don't win this game, it's going to hurt us. Instead of having to, like kind of you were saying, like grasping at straws as to how we're going to make this game meaningful. Just make all of them meaningful. Let's just go play everybody and be done with it. So
I'm all for it.
That's my 2 cents. But
when has practice already started, or
Monday? 17th.
Okay, awesome. So get started next week.
Yes, sir.
How many girls do you expect to have? How many do you have playing volleyball right now that could have to carry over?
I've got one playing volleyball right now, and I got 3 or 4 of my JV girls that are playing flag football right now, and they're also in the playoffs. But in terms of my varsity kids, I have 1 that's still out with volleyball right now. So
yes, so should have most of the team out there.
Should have, and I've been lucky because this is the fewest number of volleyball kids I've ever had. I usually have, I think my first year at Helena, I had like 6 girls. That like the bulk of my varsity roster, I didn't get until they went deep run. So middle October, end October. So this year, only having 2 volleyball, and then one of them was a JV volleyball kid that plays varsity, so she rolled back into the weight room today. So we'll just be missing one varsity kid when we get rolling. So that's going to be hopefully a plus.
Awesome. Well, it's right around the corner. We look forward to getting it started, Coach. Really appreciate you taking the time to come out here and join us tonight here at the Steakhouse of Helena, and good luck to you and your team this year. Really looking forward to seeing how things go for y'all.
Caleb, appreciate it, man. Thanks for having me.
Yes, sir. We'll be back with more here on Howlin with the Huskies right after this.
The Steakhouse of Helena is the place for community gatherings, rich history, and delectable, made-from-scratch meals. Our professional staff is dedicated to serving you with the best steaks, chops, burgers, salads, sandwiches, and more. You'll enjoy a welcoming community atmosphere, local history, and enjoyable dishes you won't find anywhere else. Our restaurant is perfect for the entire family, business events, and special occasions. So come on down to the Steakhouse in historic Old Town Helena.
Welcome back in, Howlin with the Huskies, live from the Steakhouse of Helena. Caleb Brooks joined by head boys basketball coach, Coach Lucas McDonald, and Coach taking over now first year at Helena, and you've been a head coach at other places. You were a head girls coach at Pelham. You've been on the college level, and you've done it all. You now took a couple of years off from coaching, now getting back into it. Coming back into coaching now, what is the thing that you have found yourself enjoying the most and getting back in the swing of everything?
Oh, I think the biggest thing for me is relationships. You know, building those relationships with kids. That's why I always got into this at the beginning anyways. And I missed that part, you know, being away. I did get to be dad for a couple of years, which was nice. I got to sit in the stands and watch my son play at Vestavia and you know, cheer him on and all those sorts of things. But I miss those relationships with kids and watching them mature and helping them grow into young men. And, you know, that was a big part. You know, I sat down with my son and we talked about this because it was a big family decision, obviously, because it's going to take away from me being able to be at his games and be around him as much as I have been the last couple of years. And, you know, he encouraged me to do it because he knows how much I enjoy that part of it, that aspect of it, and building those relationships and watching these guys grow up and come back 2, 3, 4 years after they graduate, heck, 7, 8 years after they graduate, and they come back and can say, hey, Coach, you know, what we did has really helped me be a better person, helped me be a better man, you know, better husband, better father, any of those things, and that's the ultimate goal.
You were at Pelham, now going to make the move over to Helena, and so, you know, what's that kind of been like, you know, going from the other rival school now to this rival school and being in their hallways and everything?
It's, you know, school is a school.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, it's going to be weird the first time we walk in there. I know I talked with Mrs. Bear and Coach Busby, you know, in our interview, and I was telling them, I said, I expect some really good signs when we walk over there from the student section for sure. But no, it'll be exciting. It's always a great atmosphere. You know, I told these guys when I first came in, you know, I always felt like I had a part of Helena because we coached that first group of guys that came over here and for Coach Latch, you know, and watched them kind of grow as under Coach Latch's you know, program and what he did here. But, you know, I always felt like I had a connection to that because we started those guys off. Most of those guys played JV for us over at Pelham. And so it was an interesting dynamic, I guess, just to kind of see that and be a part of that. So I've really always kind of felt like I had a little bit of a connection to Helena anyways. But I'm excited to be here, excited to get going. We've been working really hard, worked all summer. Preseason's been good, conditioning, weight room, skill work, and just excited about the upcoming year.
What was the hardest part of, you know, taking the break that you did, watching your son play and not being the coach at that time? You know, I'm sure you saw some things at times where you probably wanted to point things out and things like that.
Yeah, you know, I get a different perspective. You know, I tell parents that all the time. I would sit there at Vestavia, and some of the parents would be like, how can you sit here so calm? Like, how can you be so calm watching this game? And, you know, I just see it from a little bit different perspective, being a coach too and a parent, and I've been in both shoes now. I see it both ways. But, you know, for me, it wasn't always about, you know, I had a chance to talk to my son after the game. If he asked me about what I thought, we would talk about things I thought he could improve on, things he did well. But he's got a lot going on during the game. He doesn't need me yelling and screaming at him during the game. He doesn't need any of that. He's got enough going on. So, you know, I miss the adjustments. I miss the X's and O's, you know, scheming for games and things like that, and opponents. I really, you know, it's very analytical, I guess, in that aspect. So I missed that part of it a little bit. But it was really nice to just kind of be dad for a couple of years after, you know, coaching for 14, 15 years straight. So.
You talk about the X's and O's. Tell me a little bit about your style of basketball, and will it change any with how you had your girls playing compared to how you'll have your guys playing?
Well, it's, we're going to do what's going to be best for us, what's going to make us the most successful. We've already changed what we're going to do this year a little bit from what I've ever done in the past, just because it fits our personnel better. That's the thing in high school. You can't recruit. And so you got to match your personnel to, you can have some basic ideas, and that's what we do. We have some basic ideas. We're going to play man to man, but we're going to mix in some zone here and there. The way that we play man is going to be schematically the way that I've done it for a long time, but we're going to make adjustments as we go along. Offensively, we're going to do what is going to give us the best opportunity to win. We've got a lot of guys that can play inside out this year, so we're going to do a lot of that, playing inside out. We will throw it into the post, which isn't necessarily the most popular thing anymore. Is to throw it into the post. Everybody wants to dribble drive. It's we're going to do what gives us the best advantage and gives us the best opportunity to win, and looking forward to developing that. And we had some success with that this summer, and the guys, really had a chance. I know it was the summertime and wins don't matter, but they do. And that was the one thing I met with our guys after we came back, and we had individual meetings with all my varsity guys. I do that, and we sat down, and the number one thing that they enjoyed out of the summer is we won. And yeah, that's great. But really competed this summer. Had a chance. We played a lot of really good programs. Beat a lot of 7A schools, which was good for us, good for our guys and their confidence, I think, and us moving forward. And part of that was what we were doing offensively, defensively, but then buying in too.
How big is that, the fact that you can come in as a new coach and you get to play games in the summer? They get to experience what it's like to play for you in a game. You get to see what they're like in a game. You get to kind of already start making those adjustments and getting that chemistry going. There's not many other sports where you get that opportunity, and basketball is one of those where you do. How important do you think that is for all new coaches?
Oh, it's huge. It's huge. They didn't know me. I didn't get the job until middle of May or the very beginning of May, so didn't really have a chance to do a whole lot with tryouts. We had a couple days, 3 days of tryouts, but there's not a whole lot. I mean, I can learn some things about these guys in 3 days, but I'm not going to know everything in 3 days. But yeah, we had a chance. Now, we didn't play as many games as some programs did, simply because we had to get in the gym and we had to practice. We had to lay our foundation for our fundamentals and what we're doing offensively, defensively. But it gave us a chance. It gave me a chance to put guys out there in different situations throughout the summer, see who can handle what in terms of different situations, different parts of the game, who's good at different pressure situations, those types of things when we make adjustments. So it's huge for us in basketball to be able to get that opportunity. And really, as a new coach, it allowed me to do a lot of those things. Next year, it allowed me to put guys in situations that maybe they're not comfortable with, and I get to see them work through some of that, hopefully, and become more comfortable and expand their game. So, basketball, we have that advantage of being able to play now as many games, really, as we want during the month of June, those 3 weeks. I know there were teams this summer that played 20, 30 games, I think, which for me would be, that's a lot. That's crazy to me. But, some guys, some of the programs are well established. They know what they're going to do. So it's more about let's get out there and let's play and put guys in situations.
Talked about your son earlier. Was there any conversation of him making the move over here with you?
There was. I mean, that's a constant conversation. It was a conversation. I didn't want to put any undue pressure on him about that. My biggest thing with him was I couldn't tell him what it was going to be like. I hadn't been over here. I couldn't tell him what these guys were like yet. I didn't really know these guys that well. I knew of them. I knew a little bit about them, but I didn't really know them. And my big thing for him was, he's grown up in Vestavia most of his life. He's played basketball with those guys most of his life. He's got a really good group of guys that he enjoys really playing with. And I told him that's a big part of high school athletics, is the guys you play with. That experience and that bond that you have with those guys is a big part of your experience. And I didn't want him to come over here, feel like I had pressured him, and then maybe it didn't go the way he wanted to. And, I felt like that would, I didn't want that to be a point of contention with him later in life. And it's his decision. He has to make those decisions, and that was part of our conversation too, is you got to make tough decisions in life, and this is just one of those decisions. And I was going to support him either way, which I have. And he chose to stay over there at Vestavia this year. They're going to be really successful. Coach Davis does a great job. runs a great program. So, looking forward to when I do get a chance to watch him play, seeing him grow again this year as he's continued to do every year. But, we'll see what the future brings. But for this year, the best thing for him was probably to stay where he was.
Are y'all going to be playing against each other?
We don't this year.
Okay.
This is, I think, the first year that Helena and Vestavia haven't played in a while. So no, it wasn't.
Not even a chance in like a tournament
no,
or anything?
No, not this year. Usually Helena goes over, we go over and play in the Sneaky Pete at Thanksgiving, but that wasn't even on the schedule this year. I think Coach Davis was trying to get maybe some new teams in there. He had maybe felt like there was, he wanted to get a new mix of teams that were in there, and that was fine, and I understand that. Are
you kind of happy about that in a way?
A little bit, maybe.
Yeah.
You never know. I would hate to game plan against, if I were to see my son later on, but that's just the way it is. And no, this year there won't be a chance. Maybe next year, I don't know. We'll see.
Do you think is he disappointed about it, or?
We really didn't talk about it. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't think so. He would love to play us, I'm sure. But no, I don't. I don't know. My son and I hadn't really talked about it.
What does this team have coming back off of last year's group?
Yeah, it's a solid nucleus of guys coming back. We've got some really good young kids. We've got a good mix of older kids. We do have, and I kept 7 seniors this year, so we got a good mix of older guys, guys that have some experience coming back. And we have quite a few guys that have the ability to score. This summer, the big thing for us was, and I think last year, Josh Williams played a big role in terms of scoring for them. But I thought last year in some of the games that I saw, and just some of the things that I saw, is some teams could kind of key on him a little bit. This summer we tried to mix in. We had multiple games where we had 4 and 5 guys in double figures or right near double figures. And I tried to stress to the guys, if we can do that, we're hard to beat. We're hard to guard. And letting the game come to us, all 5 guys. So, taking advantage when we have it there, but not trying to force things. And, this summer, like I said, I think we're starting to get that. We're starting to figure that out a little bit more. Now, it's been a while since we played a game, so it's going to be rocky again. But I do feel like they really started to grasp some of the concepts and things that we were talking about. So, good nucleus of guys coming back. Defensively, it's going to be different for us. Coach Grant, I've known Coach Grant for a long time. He's a matchup zone guy. I'm more of a man guy, so that's been completely different for the guys a little bit. But I think it's been, good. It's just different. It's just different, and maybe they were ready for a little bit of a change in some of those things. And we got a couple guys that can really guard. A couple guys that can get up and really guard you, and did a really good job this summer when we had to play teams and played some teams that had some pretty good athletes and some pretty good scorers. So looking forward to seeing how we progress as the year goes on.
We saw Coach Studeman go up to Coleman last year and win it in year 1. He had a senior-led team. Is that a good example to use, with your group? Hey, look what this team was able to go accomplish in our same classification with a new coach last year, and we can go do the same thing.
Yeah, we've talked a lot about that, and the big thing for us this fall as well has been is building toughness. Toughness, if you want to be successful at a high level, whether it's 5A, 4A, 6A, 7A, you better be really tough. And it comes down to, I guarantee you those kids at Coleman are tough. They're tough kids. Mentally, they're tough. They've been kind of been through it a little bit even before Stu got there. So, and he made them tougher, I guarantee you. But, it's one of those things where we've just been trying to build that this fall, building that toughness. Because, again, it's going to come down to toughness in a lot of these games, and it's going to come down to 2, 3, 4 possessions, and who can execute, who's tough enough to mentally execute in those possessions, who's tough enough to box out, who's tough enough to take care of the ball. All those little things that make such a huge difference in a basketball game, especially when you're talking about late in the game. And these teams that we play, we're going to know each other so well, that it's going to come down to, we know what's coming, can we stop it, and can they stop us? So that toughness part, I think, is really what we've been trying to stress, and I think we've been getting there. We've been working on that mental part of the game a lot.
We talked in the last segment a little bit about
the way that area's set up and things like that. What are your thoughts on the way that all of that's done? Getting into the postseason, the way area. I mean, it comes down to the area tournament, just all of that type of stuff.
Yeah, you know what? I've been in 3-team areas. I've been in a 4-team area. I've been in a 5-team area. I've been in all of those in some way in the past, and I wish we had regions. I think regions would, for us, if it was a 7 or an 8-team region, I think it would make it a little more like a conference type situation, and I enjoy that part of it. I actually grew up in Kansas, and we had conference play in Kansas, and how we did that. But again, it is different. The one thing, I think the biggest thing that I dislike about our setup in basketball is when we have a tiebreaker, it comes down to a coin flip. Yeah. That's the kind of the weirdest tiebreaker to me. It doesn't come down to points. It doesn't come down, any of those types of things. It's a coin flip. But it is what it is. Area, you got to get out of that first round game. In a 3-team area, you made the comment earlier. It's if you win, you're in. Yeah. You know that, and you're hopefully not necessarily guaranteed, but you have a chance. You're going to be hosting an area tournament. You have a really good chance of winning that one, hopefully, and then you get to host that sub-region game. But you got to win that first game. I've been a part of, and we were actually the 4 seed at Pelham when we upset Helena as the 1 seed. There's a lot of pressure in that first game, especially if you're that 1 seed and you're in a 4-team area, because all the pressure's on you. The 4 comes in and they're just kind of playing loose. They got nothing to lose, but that's no different than March Madness. When you start talking about NCAA basketball, with conference tournaments and things like that. So it's just another aspect to have to, as a coach, you got to manage with the guys and mentally manage it and try to keep them loose and playing, the way that you should play. Again, it is what it is. We'll get through it, and our goal is to host hopefully this year and then have a chance to get to a sub-region game and get to a regional, because these guys have never experienced that, and I've talked a lot about that. We had several opportunities at Pelham when I was there to play in regionals down in Montgomery. Enjoyed that experience. We were 1 game away one year from getting to the state tournament at the BJCC and lost to the state champion that year, but had a shot. And I've had those experiences, and I want this group to have that experience. I want this group of seniors to really have that experience, and I think they're hungry for that. So I hope we're willing to put in the dedication and commitment, and I think we are, to help us, give us at least the opportunity to have that chance.
I think one of the biggest problems that I have with all of it too is like what you just talked about, the 4 seed coming in beating the 1 seed in the regular season. The 1 seed's already beaten that 4 seed twice. Now they've got to get up to go do it again. And as a coach, is that probably one of the things that you also dislike the most, is now you've got to motivate your team to get back up to beat a team that you've really probably already beaten twice that season pretty handily.
Yeah, and it's tough. Now, it's tough to beat any team 3 times in the season, especially when you're talking about teams that know each other so well,
we saw it a couple years ago with Viger beating Williamson. When Williamson was the 1 seed, had already beaten them by like 30 both games, and then Viger goes on to the Final Four.
Yeah, I mean, it is, and it's, obviously in basketball, it's one of those situations where it's one and done, and if you lose that first game, you're done. But it is, I mean, you come in, when I was at Pelham, we had those 2 games that we lost pretty handily to Helena, and we came in with a completely different game plan, had to change it up, and it worked. And we actually made a run that year, got to the regional that year, went down a sub-region game. We had to go down to Russell County, beat them at the buzzer down there at their place, and then had a chance and played Jess Lanier down in Montgomery in the regional. But yeah, it is. It's hard to beat a team 3 times, especially when you're talking about, again, like we said, teams that know each other so well. But again, it's one of those things where that going in, you got to mentally prepare those kids and prepare them for what may be coming. We've talked about this when I was at Pelham too. That was always a thing with Chris Love at Oak Mountain. I mean, he's a great coach, and we would sit there and rack our brains. Okay, we beat them 2-3 times, I think, one year. The 4th time we were going to see them, it was like, okay, what's he going to do next? What do we got to be prepared for? What do we have to make sure we're ready for when he walks in the door next time? Because he's coming with something new, and we got to figure it out and hopefully have a game plan ready for it. So I think that's the thing is you start trying to figure out, okay, what are different teams going to try to do to us in that situation, if you're in that situation, and then try to make sure your guys are prepared for it. So it's not the first time that they see it. You know, obviously in practice it's not going to be exactly the same as that game, high pressure situation, but you've at least talked about it. This is what we're looking to do. This is what we're looking to attack in terms of if they try to play us this way or that way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, oh yeah. When you look at next week getting started, obviously football's still going on. How many of your guys are out there playing football right now?
We got several. I mean, not as many varsity guys. I got one, maybe two varsity guys that could play varsity JV that are out there with football still. Most of my guys are going to be JV and freshman guys right now. I think I've got 9 or 10 playing that would be on our freshman basketball team or JV basketball team. So begin with first couple weeks, it's going to be a little different. We're going to be all together, all 3 teams, kind of practicing together just because of numbers. But once I think JV football's last game is the 24th of October, we'll get some of our freshmen back so they can start having their own practices, and then we'll have varsity and JV practicing together. So excited to get going every day. We've been doing our 2 hours a week, once a week. It's just not the same, can't be as consistent, but we've even seen growth, in the last month and a half in terms of what we're doing there. So it'll just be good to get in the gym every day and be able to have that ball in the hand and working on getting better and preparing for November.
Having everybody practice together, I mean, that could be a good thing too, in the sense of those younger guys getting to watch these older guys and how they kind of adjust with you and practice with you. And is that something that you will enjoy out of that experience?
It is, and that's the way it's been. I mean, all preseason we've done our 2 hours, we've been all together, so they have had a chance to see what happens on that end with the varsity group while we're on the other end with the freshmen and JV, and having those older guys have a chance to mentor those young guys. I sat in our meetings with our varsity guys and had that conversation with them about, think back when you were a freshman and who were the seniors on your team? Were they a good example or were they a bad example? And that's your responsibility. We're going to go as far as you guys lead us. And the example that you set every day, how you walk in this gym, how you react to me, how you react to adversity, how you react to when things just aren't going your way that day, is going to speak volumes to these freshmen. And that's a huge opportunity for you to, affect this program even after you're gone. And we talked about that a lot, and I talked about that with every one of my older guys. Because again, it's hard for them to see past next week sometimes, and get them to understand that they are going to have a lasting effect one way or the other on this program for years to come.
Who do you guys open up with, and what date is it?
You're going to ask me to put me on the spot. It is. I think it's November 10th, and it's Calera.
Okay.
We play at home, if I remember correctly. Calera at home.
Yeah, and I know Calera's got a good team coming out this year.
We have it's going to be a tough schedule. And that's good. It's going to challenge us. A lot of really good area or Shelby County opponents and opponents from local areas as well. But it's a challenging schedule. It's going to be good for our guys. It's going to test us every night, and there's not a lot of cupcakes on there. So it's going to be interesting. It's going to be good. It's going to be fun.
Awesome. Well, Coach, really appreciate you taking the time to join us here on Howlin with the Huskies. Ready to get things started next week with practice officially getting started. And then, as you said, November 10th, first game. And hopefully got football and basketball going on at the same time at that time, and both teams going. And it's always a great time of year when you can have that going on, and both teams are getting to play, and you got so much school spirit going on. So really looking forward to seeing how year one under Coach McDonald goes, and wish you guys nothing but luck this year.
I appreciate it, Cal. Thank you.
Yes, sir. It's going to do it for us here on Howlin with the Huskies. We'll be back next week to recap the football game with Calera and start looking ahead to the next one with Benjamin Russell. Stay tuned for more throughout the week here with Average Joe Sports Talk.
The Steakhouse of Helena is the place for community gatherings, rich history, and delectable, made-from-scratch meals. Our professional staff is dedicated to serving you with the best steaks, chops, burgers, salads, sandwiches, and more. You'll enjoy a welcoming community atmosphere, local history, and enjoyable dishes you won't find anywhere else. Our restaurant is perfect for the entire family, business events, and special occasions. So come on down to the Steakhouse in historic Old Town Helena.